Clement, shall I start?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You can start, sir.
Okay. Honorable Vice Chancellor and respected Dean, sir, Chairman and members of the organizing committee, and colleagues, and all the participants, good evening to all. So, first of all, I wish to thank our beloved Dean, sir, and the organizing secretary for the opportunity given to deliver this lecture in this international webinar. So, the topic is forensic entomology, insects as evidence. So, if you see the definition of the forensic entomology, it is the science of collecting and analyzing insect and other arthropod evidence normally found in a decomposing vertebrate corpse or a carrion that will help in the forensic investigations. Actually, it is a multidisciplinary science that involves the fields of insect taxonomy, physiology, genetics, population dynamics, ecology, and statistics. So, as a routine case after death, the forensic pathologist he can give a rough estimate of the postmortem interval, normally from the physical and the histochemical consequences of the death. But these changes they are less precise with time, and after 72 hours, the entomological evidence it is the only method available to determine the time since death. So that is most accurate. There may be slight variations in a day or a range of days. How these insects they are correlated with this forensic pathology. So if you see the life cycle of certain species of insects, they normally coincide with the stages of decomposition, and we can able to predict the host preference and the rate of growth under particular environmental conditions. And suppose if you know the temperature and location from where a body was found, so the collection of insect specimens from the site will help to determine a number of things. For example, we can able to tell how long a body has been dead. And the next one is whether the death had been preceded by any form of trauma or neglect preceding death. And third one is the whether the body was tampered with at any time. So if you see the history of forensic entomology, uh, though it may seem technically advanced, it is actually a method that has been used for centuries. So the first recorded forensic entomologic evidence in a criminal investigation is in China during the 13th century. And if you see the history, it is quite interesting. When a farmer was found murdered in a field with a sharp weapon, so all the suspects they were asked to place their sickles on the ground. Only one sickle they attracted blowflies to the trace amount of blood hidden to the naked eye, and this actually leads to the confession by the murderer. So the application of forensic entomology in a modern court was in the 18th century in France. So what is the role of forensic entomology?
Hello, Meenakshi Sundaram, sir.
వాడికి కాదు అన్న కూడా ఏ టైంకి చుట్టూ తెలుసు వాటికి మళ్ళీ ఏం చేయలేదు అన్ని టయానికి ఇది టయానికి తెలుసు మనం
Sorry for the interruption. So hello, Purajan.
Sir, it's audible, sir. You can proceed, sir.
Sorry for the interruption. So, what is the role of forensic entomologist? So, by applying the knowledge of insects, their life cycle and behaviors, we can provide a clues for the criminal investigations. So, if you see the role of forensic entomologist means, first one is he has to identify the insects of various stages of development, and he has to collect and preserve the insects as evidence. And next one is find the approximate time since the death, and if necessary, he has to produce the insect-related evidence in the court if necessary. And if you see, there are three broad categories of forensic entomology, starting from urban forensic entomology, stored product forensic entomology, and medico-legal forensic entomology. And we are more concerned about this medico-legal forensic entomology. So it is the criminal component of the legal system and normally deals with the necrophagous feeding insects that typically infest human and animal remains. And immediately after death, the decomposition normally, or otherwise we can say autolysis, will take place. So this will take place in 5 stages that can be evidenced on the basis of physical appearance of carcass, internal temperature, and characteristic insect population. So these 5 stages, the first stage is the autolysis, or otherwise we can say fresh stage. That is the normally it is from day 1 to 2, and the more number of insects they will be attracted within the first 10 minutes of the death, but there will not be any oviposition, or otherwise we can say there will not be any egg laying. The second stage is the bloating stage, that is from day 2 to 7, and the greatest number of adult diphtheria flies will be seen during this stage, and at the 4th day there will be first and the early second stage larvae of the diphtheria flies will be seen on the carcass. Apart from that, on day 2, the predatory diphtheria larvae, for example, we can say the Chrysomia megacephala larvae will also be seen on the day 2. Next one is the decay stage. So that is from 5 to 13 days. So the larvae, they start leaving the carcass to become the next stage, that is the pupa. And the 4th stage is the post-decay stage, or otherwise we can say dry decay stage, that is 10 to 23 days. And majority of the larvae, they leave the carcass to become pupa. So last stage is the remains stage. Almost all the adult and the larval population will leave the carcass. Okay. So during the process of decomposition, numerous volatile chemicals and gases will be released during each stages of decomposition. So these chemicals, they normally can modify the insect's behavior. For example, we can say the sulfur-based compounds, they will be responsible for attracting the flies to the decomposing carcass. Like that, the ammonia-rich compounds, they are responsible for the egg laying, or otherwise we can say these compounds, they make the fly to oviposit on the carcass. Next one is the insect succession. For normally the following death, insects will be attracted by the specific signals and it will be attracted towards the carcass, and they will start laying during different stages of decomposition. So all the flies will not be attracted towards the carcass simultaneously, but they will be attracted in a more or less predictable chronological sequence. This we can say insect succession. So the mere succession waves in which the arthropods colonize the carrier provides clues for the investigations, because some flies, they prefer to feed on fresh carcass. And some other group of insects, they do not feed on the dead tissues, but they will be attracted to the carcass to feed as a predator on the necrophagous insects. And some other insects, they normally feed on a dead body of 2 weeks old. So this succession waves, that is the nature by which the arthropods will be attracted, will give an idea about the approximate time of death. So the Smith in the year 1986, he given 4 categories of insects normally that will be attracted towards the decomposing carcass. First one is the necrophagous insects that feed on the carrion, and second one is the predator and the parasites. Normally they feed on the necrophagous insects, that is they feed on the larvae of the previous one, that is the necrophagous insects. A third one is the omnivorous species. They will feed on the carrion and other arthropods like ants, wasps, and some other beetles. The fourth category that includes springtails and some spiders, which will use the corpse as an extension of their environment. So the first 2 groups, that is the necrophagous and the predator and parasitic group of insects or arthropods, are very much important from the forensic entomological point of view. First one is the order Diptera, that is the true flies, and the second one is the Coleoptera, that is the beetles. And if you see the order Diptera, that is the true flies, the predominant flies are 3 in numbers. First, we can say that is the family Calliphoridae. And next one is the Sarcophagidae, that is the flesh flies. And third one is the Musidae, it is nothing but the house flies. So the Caliphorid fly, that is the blowflies, and the Sarcophagidae, that is the flesh flies, normally they tend to arrive during the first stages of decomposition, and that will become more abundant during the bloat and the early decay stages. So the number will also decrease during the advanced decay, and they are no longer attracted to the carcass once they reach the dry stage. So the Caliphorid flies and the Sarcophagic flies will be seen only during the first stage of the carcass. Whereas the second category, that is the housefly or the family Musidae, they tend to arrive during the later stages, normally during the later stages, especially during the bloating stage, and they will continue to feed on those carcass until the end of the advanced stage. So beetles, they come in the last. Okay, so in short, we can tell that the flies arrive at the carcass first and leave when the carcass remains dry out, whereas the beetles, they arrive later and continue to feed on the carcass. So these are all the various dipteran flies, that is the blowflies and the flesh fly. So blowfly means normally we can say it comes under the Caliphorid flies, and the flesh fly, it is the Sarcophaga, and the later stage of decomposition, it is the housefly. So now we see the morphological characters of the Caliphorid flies. So normally the Caliphorid flies, they are different. Normally we can say they are beauty-bearing flies. That is, they may be a green bottle fly or a blue-green bottle fly or a blue bottle fly. So normally they will be 10 to 14 millimeter in length, and they have a commonly shiny with metallic coloring with blue-green or blue-green and black thorax and abdomen. So these are all the different species of Caliphorid flies. That is the Chrysomia, normally we will say that is the blue-green bottle fly, and the Lucilia, that is the green or copper bottle fly, and the Calliphora, we can say is the blue bottle fly, and lastly that is the Sarcophaga, they are the flesh fly. So these flies, they normally will be attracted towards the carcass in a fresh stage. So the blowflies, that is the Caliphorid flies, they have an ability to smell the death from up to 10 miles, or otherwise we can say 16 kilometers away. Normally the blowflies, they prefer a moist carcass for their offsprings to feed on. So one more important point is the blowflies, they do not active or they do not oviposic or they do not lay the eggs during the night hours. So this cessation of oviposition during night hours, it is of an important point from the forensic importance, because so if the eggs they are detected in a calf during the night time or early morning, we can come to a conclusion that the death occurred during the previous day or earlier. So it is also an important point to keep in mind. And next one is the sarcophaga. That is the there are so many species, but normally we can say it is a flesh fly. So they are medium-sized flies with black and gray longitudinal stripes on the thorax, and they have a chessboard appearance on the abdomen. So normally they prefer to feed on the carrion and the decaying material. So their life cycle is very short, and they are the most useful insects for the first 3 to 4 weeks after death. And one important point is that this particular fly alone, that is the sarcophaga species alone, they are larvae pairs. So straight away they give birth to larvae at any stages of the decomposition of the carcass. And the larvae, normally they will be white to slightly yellow in color, and they will reach up to 22 millimeter prior to become pupa. And the pupa is a barrel-shaped pupa, and the 12 millimeter in length. So these measurements are very much important from the for the aging of the larvae. So pupal stage normally lasts for 16 days, and the total life cycle will be completed in 9 to 12 days. So this is the blowflies. They will be looking to deposit the eggs on the abscess on the pig carcass. So this is an bloated pigs. Numerous number of blowflies will be seen on the body of the animals. So next one is the life cycle. So the life cycle, all the blowflies and the musca, they come under the suborder Cyclorrhapha. They have a complete morphosis. All the stages, that is starting from egg, larvae, pupa, and adult. So they occur in a sequential manner. Then we can say that it is a holometabolous or complete metamorphosis. So the adult fly in 12 to 24 hours, they lay the eggs in clumps. Normally they will be laid in clumps. That will be, so the size of the eggs will be 2 to 3 millimeter in length. So the eggs will be hatched in 23 hours into the first larval instar. So normally there will be 3 larval instars, L1, L2 and L3. So the eggs will be hatched out into first stage larvae in about 23 hours, and it will be around 2 to 4 millimeter in length. And this first stage larvae, again in 27 hours, they will metamorphose into second stage larvae. That will be around 5 to 8 millimeter in length. So the second stage larvae, again they will mold to the third stage larvae in 22 hours, and the size is 10 to 15 mm in length. Finally, the third stage larvae, they undergo pupation, and they will become pupa in 130 hours, and the size of the pupa will be 6 to 10 millimeter in size. The length of the pupa will be 6 to 10 millimeter in size. So the pupa, finally they become adult in 143 hours. So this is the complete life cycle of all the blowflies and also the sarcophaga. So approximately it takes around 14 to 16 days from the egg to adult, depending upon the temperature and the humidity levels, because the temperature and the humidity will play an important role in the developmental stages of all the flies. So this is the life cycle stages of the Chrysomia megacephala. This is an predatory insects. Normally these fly, they will feed on the larvae of the Necrophagous insects. That is the Chrysomia sarcophaga. So here we can able to see the clumps of eggs that will appear, looks like a thick white clumps on the carcass, and there will be maggots near the mouth and the nose. Again, the pig carcass infested with blowfly maggots. And this is the larvae of blowflies. So they have we can say that it is a smooth larvae, or otherwise we can say maggots. So the anterior end of the larvae, they are very pointed, and the posterior end is broad, or we can say oblique in nature. And apart from that, the anterior end, it will have a oral hook. So these are the morphological characters of the larvae, whether it may be a first stage larvae or second stage larvae or third stage larvae. So the next important fly is the house fly. Normally it will occur in the last stage, that is the almost in the bloated stage. So normally they will be medium sized, gray in color, and 8 to 12 millimeter in long, and they will have two large eyes and with so many morphological character, abdomen 5 segments. So this is the house flies on the dead host. Okay, if you see the life cycle of the housefly, so the adult housefly, so in 12 to 24 hours, they will lay the eggs that will be 1.2 millimeter in size, and this eggs will be hatched out in 12 hours into first stage larvae that will be 3 millimeter in length. Whereas the first stage larvae, they will mold to become the second stage larvae in 12 hours, and the second stage larvae, it is around 6 millimeter, which transform into the third stage larvae in about 12 hours, and the size of the third stage larvae is 17 millimeter. And this third stage larvae, in one day, they become pre-pupa, and that will be 12 millimeter in size. Finally, the pre-pupa, they undergo pupation, and they become pupa in 2 days, that will be 9 millimeter in length. So this pupa, they will transform into adult insects in 3 days. So normally the adult flies, they will be 6 to 8 millimeter in length. So as I have already told, so the development of the insects, they are largely dependent on the temperature and the relative humidity of the surroundings. So the insects, they are cold-blooded animals, so their development and the life cycle, they are extremely dependent on the temperature and the relative humidity. Particularly the temperature, they have a profound effect on the rate of growth of the immature stages of the plant. So the duration of the development, normally that will decrease in a linear manner with increased temperature and vice versa. Suppose if the temperature increases, the duration of the development decreases, and the temperature increases, the duration will increase. So for each species of insects, there is a threshold temperature. So normally the threshold temperature, below the threshold temperature, the insect will not develop at all. So there will be a maximum threshold level and also a minimum threshold level. So by comparing the thermal history of the larvae and the temperature of the death scene, we can come to a conclusion to estimate the postmortem interval, that is the time since death. Apart from that, the first generation adult flies, that is normally developed from the larvae laid on the carcass, will also be useful for determining the age. So that can be identified by the shriveled wings and also tiny abdomen. Normally they will be gray color. So apart from that, larvae, pupae and adult insect that will be developed from the larvae will also be helpful for estimating the approximate time of death. So there are so many experiments have been conducted to find out the life cycle pattern of the various insects. Normally, this particular experiment has been conducted at for the Caliphorid flies at 20 degrees centigrade for Lucilia sericata, Lucilia cuprina, Califora, Chrysomia. So normally, the range of days, the development cycle, it ranges from 17 to 23. And again, this is an life cycle stage worked out by the author Sittik and Sambre. So they find out the life cycle in 3 seasons, that is during the rainy season, winter season and summer season. So in the summer season, automatically the time required for the development of insect is less when compared to the rainy and winter season. And again, this is for the Chrysomia rubifacius. Again, here also the summer temperature will enhance the growth of the insects or development when compared to the winter and the rainy season. Again, this is the sarcophaga. Here also the 25 degrees centigrade or 33 degrees. So the temperature, when the temperature is high, the duration of the development will decrease. Normally at 33 degrees centigrade, the total time required for the completion of the life cycle is 12 days when compared to the 25 degrees centigrade and 16 degrees centigrade. So again, this is for the Musca domestica. So at various temperature, the number of days required for the completion of life cycle. So at 35 degrees centigrade, the number of days required for the completion of life cycle is 6, but when the temperature raises, again the duration will increase. So here, so this is the important slide. So normally the age of the larvae will be estimated by the length and also the duration. So for example, the Caliphorid flies, so the various stages, what are all the measurements or what are the length of the various stages of the instars, and also the duration required to develop one stage from another stage. Like this is Caliphorid flies and Musca and Sarcophaga. So this is a very much important while estimating the approximate time since death. Okay. So there are two steps in estimating the postmortem interval. So first one is the using the succession waves of the insects. So normally I have told that the succession waves means normally after death the adult flies will be attracted towards the carcass. So all the flies, they will not occur simultaneously. So they will follow a chronological sequence to lay the eggs on the carcass. So this is, we can say, the insect succession. So it is a method normally based on the oldest stage of the insect, so that can be analyzed, and also apart from that the temperature of the region in which the body was discovered also give a rough idea about the duration or the time since it is. So this is the success based on the insect attraction, we can able to tell the approximate time of death. The second method is the correct species identification of the insects. So for example, we can able to identify the larvae, and we have to determine the age of the larvae. So in each stage of life cycle, there will be changes in the size and overall form of the larvae between instars. So because L1 will be some 3 millimeter, L2 will be 4 millimeter. So there will be changes in size and overall form of the instars. So normally the age, second method is normally the age of the maggots can be estimated by their length and also the dry weight of the oldest larvae. That will be compared to the reference data, and we can come to a conclusion that the approximate time of death. So that is the second method based on the aging the larvae. First method is the based on the succession of the insects attracted towards the carcass. The second method is the most distinctive feature of the separating the larvae is the structure of the posterior spiracle. So again, this is an important structure. So normally this is the structure responsible for the respiration. So based on the structure of the posterior spiracle, we can come to a conclusion which species it belongs to. So for example, this is the larval instars of Calliphora, that is the blue bottle fly. So here this is the anterior side hook. Normally I have already told that is the anteriorly there will be a hook, anterior hook. So this is the shape of the anterior hook of the first stage larvae, and this is the shape of the hook of the second stage larvae, and this is the posterior spiracle. Normally they will have developed larvae, that is the third stage larvae, they have three slits like things, whereas in case of second stage larvae there is only two slit like things. So it will stage of larvae, and this is the third stage larvae, that is we can say the developed larvae. So this is the anterior hook, the well developed anterior hook. Apart from that, the posterior spiracle is a well developed posterior spiracle. We can easily identify that it is a third stage larvae, and based on the size and the duration, we can able to tell this is a third stage larvae or whether it is a second. First and second stage larvae. Apart from that, the posterior spiracle of the second stage larvae. So this is the completely developed third stage larvae, anterior hook, and this is the posterior spiracle. So they have a D-shaped posterior spiracle. Normally they will be two in numbers, and within the posterior spiracle they will have a M-shaped winding slit. So this is also a most important or distinctive structure, that is the posterior spiracle. Normally will be helpful to identify the larval instars of the particular species. So this is the various posterior spiracles of the various fly larvae. That is the Chrysomia, Lucilia, Sarcophaga, Califora, and Musca. So next one is the determining the site of trade. So normally a careful examination of the species of insect should will be tried. So that will reveal the species variation as some species associated with one type of habitat present in a corpse will be different from those when the corpse is transported after death. So the place will also influence the type of insects that will be attracted towards the carcass. So that will also well collect. So next important thing is the collection of insects. So normally one important problem facing the entomologist is the accurate identification of the larvae or maggots collected from the corpse. Frequently, only dead specimens, or we can say often poorly preserved specimens, will be submitted for identification. So the first and most important stage of the collection procedure is the forensic collection procedure is the collection of the insect evidence from the death site. Okay, samples of insects of all the species should be collected from the death scene. So while collecting the specimens, we should not utmost care should be taken to without disturbing the remains. Normally, there is every chances for disturbing the remains while collecting the specimens. So utmost care should be taken during the collection of insect without disturbing the remains. Okay. So samples of insects of all the stages should be collected from different areas of the body and also from the soil. So the adult flies normally will be seen in the death scene will be trapped using the insect net, and they can be preserved in 70% alcohol. And the next important stage we have to collect is the eggs. Normally it can be easily overlooked. So next stage is the larvae. So normally the larvae has to be collected from the maggot mass. So maggot mass means where the larvae will be congregated. For example, in the wounds there will be more number of larvae. Apart from the natural body openings like wounds, nostrils or ears, and there will be more number of larvae. So these larvae will be collected and they will be placed directly into the killing solution or ethyl alcohol, or otherwise after collecting the larvae, that should be immersed and killed in hot water for about 30 seconds for better preservation. So after killing with hot water, they have to be preserved in the 70% alcohol. So the killing of larvae in hot water, they has two advantages. One is the death of the larvae or the maggots will be instantaneous, and next one is the larvae will be killed in a relaxed state. So they will be in a stretched position. So it is very easy to measure the length of the larvae if we kill the larvae using the boiled water. And suppose if the maggots are immersed in the preservative to kill them, they will shrink and any measurements will be difficult to interpret. So it is always after collecting the live larvae, that should be immersed and killed in hot water for 30 seconds. Then it should be preserved in 70% alcohol. So as much as possible, we have to collect more number of larvae. So we can say around 100 number of larvae. So while collecting the larvae and while placing the larvae in the specimen jar, so there will be one maggot thickness should be, so ensure there will be only one magnet thickness. Otherwise, the too many larvae in the jar will lead to drowning of the larvae. So that we should be kept in mind while collecting and placing the larvae in the specimen jar. So the age of the largest larvae or the oldest larvae, so that is the actively feeding maggots, that will be very much useful for finding out the postmortem interval, especially within the first life cycle. Okay. And next method, that is the next way, is the estimate of the fly to rear them into adult stage. Normally, the larvae will be collected and that will be reared to become adult stage, and based on the duration of the development time, we can able to tell the postmortem interval. So the larvae can be kept alive in the jars by placing some meat or liver, and they can able to they can be reared into the adult stage. Normally, a plastic jars will be used for about for the rearing of this larvae. So normally the bottom of the jar will be covered with 3 centimeter thickness of sawdust. So this will help or this will provide a dry place for pupation. Then on the sawdust we have to keep some meat or liver piece. Then the larvae will be placed in the jar, and that will be covered with a cloth, and that should be kept in a controlled environment for the development of adult. So daily by 10 to 12 a.m. we have to observe for the emergence of the stage from the larvae. So after the emergence of the adult fly, that has to be killed, and we have to pin the insect, and we can dry preservation. We can dry preserve, and we can identify what type of insect is, and based on the development period, we can able to say the approximate time of death. And apart from the larvae, we have also to collect the pupae, whether it may be empty or with the pupae inside them, or has also to be covered. So all the containers carrying the live specimens must be perforated for gaseous exchange. That will be very important. So if the pupa is found pale in color, so keep the specimen separate, and it should be labeled for. So this will also helpful for aging the insects, and also to identify the postmortem interval. So next one is the insects. So many of the insects normally they inhabit a corpse will remain on or buried in the ground after the body has been removed. So when collecting the insects from the soil, both the soil and litter samples should also be taken, both, and immediately they will be collected in the jars. So next one is the beetles. So normally these beetles, they comes under the order Coleoptera. So it is one of the largest group of arthropods. They also undergo complete metamorphosis. So the larvae of one species of beetles may differ from the next, and these larvae they have 3 pairs of legs. So these larvae of beetles can be differentiated from the larvae of insects by the presence of legs. Normally, the larvae of insects, they doesn't have any legs. We can say it is a smooth larvae or maggot, whereas the larvae of beetles, they normally will have 3 pairs of legs. So that is regarding the beetles. So these are all the various types of beetles normally will be seen in the carrion or the calf. So this is the carrion beetles. Normally we will see it has been in the dead animal, and it is the female carrion beetle. So next one is the DNA analysis for species identification. Sometimes the identifying the correct species is very much difficult based on the morphological comparison. So it actually requires a more special expectation, and also often it will be time consuming. Hence, the PCR or the DNA PCR amplification of the suitable larval genomes will be helpful, and that can be compared with the referred data to find out the species of the larvae, and also we can able to identify the we can able to tell the approximate time since death. Next one is the entomotoxicology. These bodies in the advanced stages of decomposition, it is very difficult to examine for toxicological substances. So larvae which feed on the carrion can accumulate the drugs ingested by the deceased person. So this can be macerated and analyzed with techniques like TLC or GCM. And apart from that, the toxins can also influence the stages of the development of the larvae. So some drugs, they can speed up or slow down the insect's development. For example, we can say the cocaine and heroin, they in the carcass, they accelerate the growth of the larvae, whereas the poisons like malathion in the carrion, they normally will delay the development of the insects. So normally the forensic entomology, it helps in opening a door in the forensic science for evidence in legal cases. But here also there are some limitations in forensic entomology. For example, the time of death estimates depend on the accurate temperature information. But local weather patterns can be variable and data may come from stations quite distant from the crime scene. So in that case, it is very much difficult to calculate the approximate type of. And the second limitation is the forensic entomology, they largely relies on the insect abundance. But in winter, there are only fewer insects and the entomologist's use is very much limited. Apart from that, it takes more time to rear insects, so the forensic entomology cannot produce immediate results. That is also one disadvantage. And some treatments, for example, the freezing, burial, or wrapping, that also excludes the insects, can affect the estimates. So these are all the limitations in the forensic entomology, even though it helps in opening the door in forensic science for the evidence in legal cases. So before to conclude, so I can say it is the forensic entomology. It is an important and emerging field in the forensic sciences. But the use in veterinary forensic entomology, it is not yet a recognized discipline, maybe due to the lack of awareness of its application or its availability as a practical science. But it will be very much important in the pet and wild animal cases. So we have to, there is an absolute need to enhance awareness among the veterinarians, to introduce teaching, specialized training, and provide access to information accordingly. So if this happens, the use of forensic entomology will definitely benefit the veterinary pathologist for the investigation of the abuse and neglect cases. Thank you.